The most expensive part of being poor isn't something you see when you check your bank account today. It's something that shows up months later, sometimes years later. And by then, most people have no idea what actually caused it. That's not a metaphor. That's how it works. Because being poor doesn't just mean you have less money. It means everything in your life quietly becomes more expensive, on a delay, in ways that feel completely unrelated when they happen. Right now it looks simple. You skip a few things. You buy the cheaper option. You tell yourself you're saving money. But that calculation is wrong. Because what feels like saving in the moment often turns into paying more later. Not in one big, obvious bill, but in small, scattered costs that show up everywhere. A repair that costs double. A fee you didn't expect. A balance that never quite goes away. And the worst part is, none of it feels connected. Today, I'm going to show you the hidden costs of being poor. The ones that don't show up immediately. The ones most people never notice. And why they quietly keep people stuck, even when they're doing everything right. If you think being poor just means having less money, you miss the real problem. Because the real cost isn't dramatic, it's quiet. It's your car breaking down and turning into a $900 problem instead of a $200 one, because you couldn't fix it earlier. It's paying more for the same groceries just because you can't afford to buy them in bulk. It's using a credit card for something small, and then watching that small thing turn into a balance that never fully disappears. Nothing about it feels like a crisis in the moment. That's why it's so dangerous. It just feels like life is slightly harder than it should be. Like money moves faster than you expect. Like you're trying to catch up, but somehow you never quite do. And over time, those small gaps add up. Not into one big financial disaster, but into something worse. A constant pressure. A system where every mistake costs more, and every delay makes things harder to fix. And if you don't understand how that system works, you don't just stay stuck. You slowly fall behind, without ever knowing exactly why. Let's zoom out for a second, because the context is the whole story. Most people think poverty is just about income. You either make enough, or you don't. Simple. But that's not how it actually works. Because once you drop below a certain level of financial cushion, the rules change. The same world, the same prices, the same systems start charging you differently. Not officially, not in a way anyone announces, but in ways that show up everywhere. You don't have savings, so a small problem becomes a big expense. You don't have access, so you pay higher prices for the same things. You don't have time, so you make decisions that cost you more later. And none of these things happen all at once. They happen one at a time, quietly, spread out over weeks and months, so they never feel like part of the same problem. But they are. Because being poor isn't just a situation, it's a system. And that system has layers. This isn't one problem, it's five. 5 hidden costs moving through your life on different timelines. Each one small enough to ignore on its own, each one easy to explain away. But together, they create something that's incredibly hard to escape. To make this real, let's follow 2 people. Same city, same prices, same world. 2 completely different outcomes. Amina, 29. She has a small savings buffer. Not much, but enough to breathe. And Bilal. Same income range, but living paycheck to paycheck. No margin for error. Nothing dramatic separates them. At least, not at first. The first cost is the one you can see. When you don't have much money, Everything costs more up front. You can't buy in bulk. You can't wait for discounts. You can't stock up when prices are low. So you pay more every single time. Amina buys a larger pack once and stretches it for weeks. Bilal buys smaller amounts more often and ends up paying more overall. It doesn't feel like a big difference, but it happens every day. And small differences, repeated daily, stop being small. The second cost shows up when something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong. A tire blows out, a phone breaks, a bill comes in higher than expected. For Amina, it's annoying. She uses her savings, fixes the problem, and moves on. For Bilal, it's different. No savings means one option: debt. What should have been a small, temporary expense becomes something permanent. Interest starts building, minimum payments start dragging, and now the next problem is already more expensive before it even happens. The third cost doesn't show up on your bank statement. It shows up in your life. When money is tight, everything takes more time. Longer commutes, more planning, more stress. You spend more energy just trying to maintain your current situation, which means you have less energy to improve it. Amina has time to think ahead. Bilal is focused on getting through the week, and that difference compounds. The fourth cost is what you miss. Not because you made a bad decision, but because you didn't have the option. You can't invest. You can't take risks. You can't wait for better opportunities. So you take what's available, even if it costs more in the long run. Amina can wait for the better deal. Bilal has to solve the problem today. And over time, those missed opportunities stack up just as much as the expenses. The fifth cost is the most dangerous, because it builds quietly. When you have money, it compounds in your favor. When you don't, it compounds against you. Interest grows, fees stack, opportunities disappear, and the gap between where you are and where you could be gets bigger every year. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because the system is working exactly as designed. Now, you might be thinking, isn't this just how life works? And in a way, it is. But here's the problem. These costs don't just exist, they stack. And once they stack, they're incredibly hard to break out of. The system doesn't just reward money, it punishes the lack of it. The less you have, the more everything costs. And the more everything costs, the harder it becomes to build anything. 12. Psychology section. And this is where most people get it wrong. They blame themselves. They think they're bad with money, undisciplined, unlucky. But when you're under constant pressure, you don't make long-term decisions. You make survival decisions. And survival decisions are expensive. So what can you actually do? Not something dramatic, not something unrealistic, just small adjustments. Build even the smallest emergency buffer. Avoid high-interest debt wherever possible. Automate something, even if it's tiny. Reduce the decisions that cost you the most long-term. None of this feels impressive, but that's the point. From here, two things can happen. You continue reacting, solving problems as they come, paying the hidden costs without realizing it. Or you start seeing them early. And once you see them early, you can reduce them before they grow. Amina and Bilal will both be okay. But one will slowly move forward, and the other will stay in the same place, wondering why it always feels harder than it should. The difference isn't effort. It's understanding the system just a little earlier. Most people will spend years thinking they're just bad with money. Now you know, it's more than that. The only question is, what you do with that understanding.